People always say you remember the exact moment when your world flips upside down. For me, it happened on an unremarkable Tuesday night in the plainest, most ordinary way you could imagine. No storm outside, no dramatic music. Just me, Carter Wexler, sitting at our scratched-up oak kitchen table, half listening to my wife Dana rattle off her day while scrolling through her phone. Then, without looking up, she said it casual as you please. "I cheated with my boss. So what?" For a second, I thought I misheard her. I even let out a little awkward laugh, thinking she was making some awful joke. But she just kept scrolling, her thumb lazily dragging down the screen, her face lit by the cold blue light of her phone. My throat dried up. My mind scrambled, searching for something, anything that made sense. A prank, a misunderstanding, something. Instead, Dana tucked a strand of her honey-brown hair behind her ear and finally looked at me, expression blank, like she had just commented on the weather. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. Honestly, I didn't even know what to say. My hands just sat uselessly in my lap, clammy and trembling. All the words I should have thrown at her. How could you? Why would you? Wasn't I enough? Got stuck somewhere deep in my chest. I wanted to vanish, to blink and find myself in some other version of life where my wife didn't look so disgustingly indifferent. But instead, I did the only thing I could think of. I quietly stood up, walked over to the drawer by the fridge, and pulled out a simple white envelope I'd hoped I'd never have to use. Dana barely glanced up. "What are you doing?" she asked, her tone a cocktail of boredom and mild annoyance, like I was interrupting her evening scroll. I didn't answer. I placed the envelope carefully on the table between us. Then I grabbed my car keys, turned without a word, and walked out the front door into the thick, humid night. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a destination. I just knew I couldn't breathe inside that house another second longer. Exactly 56 minutes later, my phone buzzed on the passenger seat where I had thrown it. It was Dana. 7 missed calls. And the text she sent next made my heart hammer against my ribs harder than her confession had. "Carter, what the hell is this? Where are you? Please answer." And that's when I smiled for the first time that night. As I pulled onto the main road, I could still picture the stunned look Dana must have had when she finally opened the envelope. That image alone kept me driving past every familiar turnoff that would have led me back home. The envelope didn't contain anything dramatic. No grand speech, no legal papers, no threats. It was much simpler and somehow far more devastating. Inside were 2 things, a printed photo and a handwritten note. The photo was grainy but clear enough. Dana, sitting far too close to her boss, a middle-aged guy named Greg Fulton, at a dimly lit restaurant across town, his hand resting casually on her thigh. Her, leaning into him, laughing with her head thrown back the way she used to laugh with me. The date and timestamp printed at the bottom corner left no room for confusion. 2 Thursdays ago, the same night she'd claimed to be stuck at a late client meeting. And under the photo, the note, short and cutting, written in the same hand that once pinned love letters to her. "Congratulations. You threw away everything for this. Good luck." I imagined her picking up that photo, the blood draining from her smug face, the reality crashing into her like a freight train. She thought she was the one in control. She thought she had the upper hand. That night, for the first time in months, I finally felt like I had taken something back. My dignity. My peace. I kept driving until the city light shrank in my rearview mirror, until all that was left were long stretches of highway and the occasional blinking sign for cheap motel. My mind spun with questions, memories, anger, but underneath it all was a strange, almost numbing calm. It was like my heart knew before my head did. This was the beginning of the end. My phone buzzed again, pulling me out of my trance. It was Dana once more. Another call, another frantic message. "Carter, what is this? Where are you? Please come home. We need to talk. Please." The woman who had spoken those words. I cheated with my boss. So what? An hour ago was now practically begging me to pick up, but I didn't. I couldn't. There was nothing left to say. I turned the phone over, silencing the vibrating rattle against the console, and pressed harder on the gas pedal. I finally stopped when I found a dingy little motel just off an empty stretch of highway. Neon vacancy sign blinking like a broken promise. I checked in under a fake name, paid cash, and collapsed onto the creaky bed, staring up at the stained ceiling tiles. I should have felt broken. I should have felt lost. Instead, for the first time in a long time, I felt something different. Freedom. That night, as I lay awake listening to the sound of trucks rumbling past on the highway, my mind began weaving the threads of a plan. A plan that would make Dana realize just how badly she had miscalculated. She thought she could confess, shrug it off, and expect me to stay like a loyal dog at her feet. But if she wanted to play ruthless, she had picked the wrong man to underestimate, and the first move was already in motion. By the time she would see me again, if she ever did, her entire reality would be unrecognizable. I barely slept that night, not because I was crying, not because I was heartbroken. That part of me had already started dying a long time ago. I just hadn't noticed until now. No, I stayed awake because my mind was sharper than it had been in years. Every betrayal, every lie Dana had told me over the past months, every little red flag I had ignored, they were all lining up now like dominoes, and I was ready to tip the first one. The next morning, as the sun barely started bleeding into the sky, I sat at the little motel desk with a cup of burnt coffee and started making a list. First, I needed to move the money. Over the years, Dana had insisted we merge everything, joint checking, joint savings, joint investments, all in the name of trust. And like a fool, I agreed. But I had kept a tiny account in my name only, one that I used for small emergency savings. It wasn't much, but it was enough to be the seed of my escape. Second, I needed proof, real proof. That grainy photo was enough to confront her, but not enough for a clean break if she decided to fight dirty later. And something told me she would. So, I made some calls. A buddy of mine, Travis, ran a small but serious private investigation firm. We hadn't spoken much in years, but when I called and said, "It's urgent and it's about my wife," he didn't even hesitate. He agreed to meet me that afternoon. Third, I needed to erase myself from Dana's life financially before she realized what was happening. Cancel shared credit cards, remove my name from bills, get a new phone number, new email, everything. It sounded extreme, but the woman who had looked me in the eye and shrugged about cheating on me was not the woman I married. She was a stranger now, and strangers didn't deserve access to my life. I showered quickly in the cracked motel bathroom, changed into fresh clothes, and checked out before 9 o'clock. Dana had sent 15 texts overnight, all variations of, "Please come back. We can talk. I'm sorry if that hurt you." Not an apology for what she did, not regret for betraying me, just regret that I was upset about it. That told me everything I needed to know. By noon, I had met with Travis. He didn't sugarcoat things. "Look, man," he said, leaning back in his squeaky office chair, "if she's this casual about it with you, she's probably been sloppy in other ways too. Give me a week. I'll have everything you need. Pictures, recordings, Texts if I can get them. I handed him the retainer without hesitation. I don't need revenge, I said, voice low and steady. I need freedom. He nodded like he understood, and somehow, I believed he did. Next, I went to the bank. It took all of 20 minutes to transfer what little remained solely in my name, withdraw a chunk of cash, and start the process of closing the joint accounts. The teller gave me a curious look, but I smiled and told her it was for a business opportunity. She didn't need to know the truth. While I waited for paperwork, I sat there thinking about all the times Dana and I had planned vacations we never took, talked about kids we never had, made promises she had already started breaking. It was funny. You think the end of a marriage comes with screaming, shattered dishes, police showing up. But sometimes it's just the quiet click of a pen signing a closure. By late afternoon, I had a burner phone, a new Gmail account, and a cheap rental apartment lined up in a part of town Dana would never think to look. I wasn't planning to hide forever, I just needed time. Time to gather everything, set it in motion, and then walk away without leaving her a single thread to pull me back in. As the sun started setting, my real phone buzzed again. Dana. This time her message wasn't frantic. It was angry. Fine. Stay gone. Be a coward. I don't care. But don't think you're taking anything from me. I earned this life too, Carter. That message was the confirmation I didn't even know I needed. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't scared of losing me. She was scared of losing what I provided. And that was the moment I promised myself she would. I didn't answer her. I simply turned off the phone, dropped it into a trash bin outside the bank, and drove toward my new life, away from the wreckage she had lit on fire with 5 careless words. And she still had no idea that the next thing I had planned would make her understand exactly what she had thrown away. 3 days passed without a single word from me, and that silence did more damage to Dana than any argument ever could. Travis sent me updates twice a day, and every single one made the picture clearer, uglier. Dana hadn't just made a one-time mistake with her boss. She was practically living a second life behind my back. Private dinners, weekends at hotels when she was working late, gifts bought with our shared money. It was all laid out in brutal, undeniable detail. Travis even managed to record a conversation between Dana and Greg where she bragged about how easy it was to keep me in the dark, how soft I was, how I would never leave because I needed her more than she needed me. I sat in my rental apartment, lights off, phone in hand, listening to those words through earbuds. I didn't feel sadness. I didn't even feel anger anymore. It was something colder, like I was watching the final scene of a movie I had already seen a dozen times before. And this time, I wasn't going to wait for the credits. Meanwhile, Dana's world was beginning to crumble in ways she couldn't even see yet. She still believed I would come back if she guilt-tripped me enough. I knew her patterns too well. I saw it unfold through the messages Travis intercepted, the love-bombing texts, the sudden change in tone from rage to desperation, the pathetic half-apologies filled with, "If I hurt you and you're overreacting." She had no idea that while she was scrambling to get a reaction out of me, I was quietly filing the paperwork to dissolve our marriage through a lawyer. No confrontation, no warning. She'd be served by the end of the week. She also didn't know that I had frozen the accounts, canceled her access to the joint savings, and shut down every shared line of credit she might have leaned on when the money started drying up. But the final blow wasn't financial. It was something much simpler, something that would hit her where it hurt most. Her reputation. You see, Dana's entire identity revolved around appearances. The perfect couple, the beautiful home, the successful husband, the glamorous businesswoman image she had so carefully crafted around her role at Greg's company. And thanks to Travis, I had exactly the right kind of evidence to quietly send to Human Resources without my fingerprints on it. Anonymous delivery. No threats, no blackmail. Just pure, undeniable truth. A neatly packaged envelope containing printed transcripts of Dana and Greg's conversations. Hotel receipts billed to the company card and screenshots of emails that no married woman should have been sending her boss at 2 a.m. By the time she even realized she was losing me, she would be losing everything else too. I spent that fourth evening at the small apartment, packing up a few more essentials into a bag, a few clothes, my laptop, some personal files, and rehearsing what little I had left to say to Dana when the time finally came. Not that I planned on saying much. She had already said everything necessary in those 5 casual words she tossed at me across the kitchen. As night fell, the loneliness started creeping in, whispering ugly things in the dark corners of my mind. Memories of our first apartment together. Cheap ramen dinners on the floor because we couldn't afford a table yet. Nights we stayed up talking about dreams we hadn't lived long enough to break. The woman she had once been, the woman I had once loved, flickered in my mind like a dying candle. I let myself feel it for exactly 5 minutes. No more. Then I blew it out. I wasn't going back. Around midnight, my new burner phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize at first. Against my better judgment, I answered. Dana's voice came through raw and ragged. "Carter, please talk to me. I messed up. I know I messed up. I was stupid. It didn't mean anything. I swear. It was just a mistake. You can't leave me like this. Please, just come home. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll do anything. Please, Carter. I love you. I love you." I stayed silent, listening to her sobs leak through the receiver like static. There was a time not long ago when those words would have shattered me, when hearing Dana cry would have broken every wall I was trying to build around my heart. But that time was over. I hung up without a word, turned the phone off and threw it into the motel trash connected to an empty vending machine. Dana had made her choices. Now she was going to live with the consequences. And me? I was just getting started. The next morning I woke up to the sound of my burner phone buzzing nonstop. I didn't even have to check to know who it was. Dana, probably panicking after a night of silence. I ignored it, swung my legs over the edge of the motel bed and sat there for a minute, grounding myself. Today was the day everything would shift. Not just for me, for her too. Today she would realize that she hadn't just lost her husband. She had lost everything else she thought she controlled. Before I left the motel, I double-checked everything. Divorce paperwork filed and scheduled to be served this afternoon. Financials locked down tighter than a vault. HR package dispatched anonymously at 7 a.m. with confirmation of receipt. There would be no warnings, no second chances, no long drawn-out battles. Just one sharp, clean cut across the web she had spun. I grabbed a coffee from the gas station down the road and sat in the parking lot, sipping the bitter liquid while staring out at the rising sun. There was a strange peace to it all. The kind of quiet you only get when the storm has already passed, and you're just standing there watching the wreckage from a safe distance. By noon, it had started. Travis called me first. "She's already been pulled into a meeting," he said, sounding almost impressed. "Word is Greg's in there too. Someone dropped the whole file on the HR director's desk this morning. Timing couldn't have been better. Apparently they're both sweating bullets." "Good," I said, my voice calm. "Keep me posted." "I will." "And Carter?" "Yeah, you did the right thing, man. Don't let her reel you back in." I hung up, pocketed the phone, and drove toward my lawyer's office. The final step was signing a few more papers, setting in motion not just a divorce but a complete severance. I wasn't fighting her for the house. I wasn't fighting her for the cars. She could have the empty shell of the life she had torched. All I wanted was freedom and my dignity, which I had already started rebuilding from the ashes she left behind. As I sat across the conference table, pen in hand, I thought about how many nights I had once stayed awake worrying about losing Dana. How many compromises I made. How many times I let small red flags slide because I didn't want to believe she was capable of what she ultimately did. Signing those papers felt nothing like defeat. It felt like breathing after being underwater for too long. An hour later, as I walked out of the office building into the bright afternoon sun, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Against my better judgment, curiosity got the better of me. I answered. It wasn't Dana. It was Greg. His voice was sharp, furious, almost manic. What the hell do you think you're doing, Carter? You're ruining lives over a few stupid mistakes. I stayed quiet, letting him rant. He accused me of being petty, vindictive, small. He actually had the audacity to say that what happened between adults was none of my business. Finally, when he paused to breathe, I spoke. You slept with my wife, I said. Voice even. You lied to your company. You broke your own marriage vows from what I hear. And now you're mad at me for consequences you created yourself. Grow up, Greg. He cursed at me. Threatened to make things difficult, whatever that meant. I laughed, actually laughed for the first time in days. Then I hung up mid-rant and blocked the number. Let him stew in his own mess. I had bigger things to focus on. By the time the evening rolled around, Dana's world was crumbling faster than I could have imagined. Travis sent me a message. Greg had been suspended, pinning an investigation. Dana, too. And according to a source inside the company, rumors were already spreading like wildfire, not just about the affair, but about the misuse of company funds, the abuse of positions, the total collapse of the fake, perfect image they had built. And just like that, the life she had cheated to protect was falling apart. Not because I shouted, not because I fought dirty, but because the truth always finds a way to burn through lies if you give it a push. At sunset, sitting on a bench in a small park far from anywhere Dana would think to find me, I watched the sky bleed red and gold and thought about the last time I had felt truly free. Maybe before we got married. Maybe before I started sacrificing pieces of myself to keep her happy. Maybe even before I believed love meant staying silent while someone else slowly destroyed you. No. Now I didn't have to stay silent anymore. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the loser in someone else's story. I felt like the author of my own. And my story, the real one, was just beginning. 2 more days passed. 2 more days of absolute silence from me, while Dana's world continued to implode around her. I knew from Travis's updates that she and Greg had both been suspended indefinitely, pinning the internal investigation. That meant no paychecks. That meant no shield of prestige to hide behind. That meant the perfect little world Dana had always flaunted to her friends, to her family, to social media. It was all turning into dust right in her hands. I rented a small storage unit across town and started moving my remaining things out of the house without her even knowing. Late at night, under the cover of darkness, Travis helped me coordinate it. He had a friend who owned a moving company, cash, no questions asked. Piece by piece, I erased myself from that house until it was just a hollow structure full of memories that no longer belonged to me. The framed wedding photos gone. My childhood guitar Dana had once called clutter, gone. Every piece of clothing, Every important document, every tiny fragment of my former life packed and secured away. Meanwhile, Dana's messages grew darker. I didn't have to read them to know where they were going. Anger, denial, bargaining, desperation. The full spiral of someone realizing they're losing control. I caught glimpses of the messages when Travis forwarded screenshots to me. It was like watching a slow, inevitable car crash. I made a mistake, but it wasn't worth ending everything over. You're overreacting. If you loved me, you come back. You're ruining both our lives, Carter. Don't you see that? She still didn't understand. I wasn't ruining anything. She had already lit the match. I had simply stepped aside and let her watch the fire. On the third evening, just after sunset, as I was sitting at a little diner nursing a cheap coffee and flipping through an apartment rental guide, my new phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize. I ignored it. It rang again and again. Finally, my curiosity got the better of me and I answered just to hear how desperate she had become. It wasn't Dana this time. It was her sister, Megan. Carter. Megan's voice cracked through the line, panicked, shaky. You need to know Dana's not okay. She's losing it. She showed up at my house an hour ago, sobbing, begging me to call you. She's talking crazy, Carter. She's not making any sense. Please, just talk to her. I didn't answer right away. Part of me, the part that still remembered good days and late-night laughter and dreams we once shared, wanted to fold, wanted to rush back, find her, fix things like I always used to. But that part of me was smaller now. Weaker. Smarter. I'm sorry, Megan, I said quietly. I can't help her anymore. She made her choices. She'll have to face them. There was a long pause. Then Megan whispered, almost like she was ashamed. You deserved better. We all knew it. I never thought she'd go this far. Neither did I wanted to say. But instead, I just thanked her for letting me know and ended the call. About an hour later, as I finished my cold coffee and stared out the diner window at the empty street, headlights swung into the parking lot. A car I knew too well, our old Toyota. The door slammed and there she was, Dana. She looked like a ghost of herself, a hair unbrushed, clothes wrinkled, makeup smeared under red-rimmed eyes. She stumbled across the lot, spotted me through the window and rushed toward the door. I could have left. I could have slipped out the back and avoided the scene, but I didn't. I wanted her to see what she had done, not to me, but to herself. She burst through the door, rushed to my table, dropped to her knees in front of me like some tragic scene out of a bad movie. People turned and stared. The waitress froze mid-pour of coffee. Someone pulled out a phone to record. Carter, please, Dana sobbed, clutching at my hand, tears streaming down her face. Please, I'll do anything. I'll quit my job. I'll cut off Greg. I'll go to therapy. I'll sell the house. I'll move anywhere you want. Please, please don't leave me. I can't do this without you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Her voice cracked, broke apart completely. She was a shell of the proud, untouchable woman who had once stood in our kitchen and shrugged off her betrayal like it was nothing more than a spilled drink. I let her sob for a moment longer, let her humiliation sink deep into her bones. Then I leaned down, voice calm and steady. You didn't lose me because of one mistake, Dana, I said. You lost me because you didn't care until you lost everything else. I gently pried my hand free, stood up, dropped a few dollars on the table for the coffee, and walked out into the cool night air without looking back. As the door swung closed behind me, I heard her collapse into broken sobs on the dirty diner floor. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel anger or pain or sadness. I felt peace, because now it was truly over. Leaving Dana there on the diner floor felt surreal, like stepping out of a dream that had turned into a nightmare, and then finally into nothingness. I didn't rush. I didn't look back. I didn't second-guess myself. I walked calmly across the parking lot to my rental car, unlocked the door, and slid inside. She stayed crumpled inside that diner like a forgotten tragedy, surrounded by the stares of strangers who didn't know the first thing about how many times I had swallowed my pride, how many nights I had laid awake wondering what I did wrong, how many chances I had given someone who would never appreciate them. I sat behind the wheel for a moment, just breathing. Not because I was doubting myself, I wasn't, but because it felt like I was shedding a second skin. The old Carter, the one who bit until he broke, the one who made excuses for someone else's betrayal, the one who thought love meant tolerating anything. That Carter was gone. What was left was someone stronger, colder maybe, but wiser and free. I pulled out of the parking lot, turned onto the main road, and didn't stop until the city was just a smear of lights in my rearview mirror. My new apartment wasn't much, a tiny one-bedroom above a laundromat, the kind of place I would have been embarrassed to live in a few months ago. Now it felt like a palace, my name on the lease, my money in the bank, my life finally in my own hands. Over the next few days, Travis finalized the last of the cleanup. Dana was formally served the divorce papers right at her sister's house where she had been crashing after getting suspended from work. From what I heard, Megan tried to convince her to get a lawyer to fight me on the terms. Dana refused. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe she finally realized there was nothing left to fight for. She signed without contest, and just like that, our marriage was over. Greg didn't fare much better. Travis's last report included a photo of him leaving the company's headquarters with a cardboard box of his things. Fired for cost. No severance. Reputation shot. His wife had already kicked him out too, according to a few sources. Funny how cheaters always think they're winning until they end up with nothing but ashes. As for Dana, her world kept shrinking. Friends distanced themselves. Family stopped answering her calls. She posted a few desperate, pitiful things on social media. Vague mistakes were made, posts, quotes about forgiveness and growth. But it was clear no one was buying it. Even the ones who didn't know the full story could smell the desperation coming off her like cheap perfume. One evening, about a month after everything exploded, I got a letter handwritten, no return address. I didn't have to open it to know it was from her. Still, curiosity nodded at me. So I sat down at my tiny kitchen table, slit the envelope open, and pulled out a single sheet of line paper. Dana's handwriting, shaky and uneven. It wasn't a letter begging me to come back. It wasn't an apology. It was something much sadder. I didn't realize what I was doing until it was too late. I miss you. I miss the life we had. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I needed you to know that losing you was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I'm sorry. I read it twice, folded it neatly, and set it aside. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't even feel satisfaction. Just a quiet, distant pity for a woman who had gambled everything real for something so cheap and fleeting, and lost. That night, as I lay in bed with the window cracked open to the cool night air, I realized something important. Forgiveness wasn't for her. It wasn't about letting her off the hook. It wasn't about reopening doors that were better left closed. It was about setting myself free from the last lingering chain she had wrapped around my soul. So I whispered into the darkness, not for her ears, but for mine. I forgive you, but I'll never come back. And in that moment, something inside me clicked into place. I wasn't broken. I wasn't bitter. I was finally, fully, absolutely free. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the ache in my chest faded into something softer, something manageable. The hollow feeling that had once sat heavy in my gut every morning when I woke up was replaced by something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, honest hope. It wasn't flashy or loud. It didn't come crashing in with grand gestures. It was quiet, gentle, the way sunlight creeps into a dark room in the early morning without asking permission. I rebuilt my life piece by piece. I moved into a better apartment. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I found a job I loved. Surrounded by people who valued integrity over image, I picked up old hobbies I had forgotten about. Playing guitar, running trails, volunteering on weekends. It felt strange at first, learning who I was without her shadow hanging over me. But day by day, it started feeling less like pretending and more like living. Dana, from what little I heard, moved back in with her parents for a while, tried to rebuild, struggled. A part of me wished her peace genuinely. I didn't hate her. I didn't root for her failure. I simply didn't belong in her story anymore, and she didn't belong in mine. One Saturday morning, while browsing through a local bookstore, I met someone. Her name was Elise. She wasn't flashy. She didn't sweep into my life with drama and chaos. She was calm, steady, with a laugh that felt like home. We started talking about books, then music, then life. No games, no secrets. Just two people being real in a world that often forgets how important that is. It didn't feel like a movie scene. It didn't feel like fireworks. It felt better. It felt like peace finding its way back to me, like a seed finally sprouting after a long, cold winter. Over time, Elise and I grew closer. It wasn't perfect. No relationship ever is, but it was honest. She knew my story, every painful detail, and she never once looked at me like I was broken. Instead, she looked at me like I was strong for having survived it. And with her, I realized something even more important. I wasn't defined by what Dana had done. I was defined by how I chose to move forward. Months later, standing on the balcony of our shared apartment, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, Elise wrapped her arms around me and said, "You're not who she made you think you were. You're better, stronger." And for the first time, I believed it. The past would always be a part of me, a scar I carried. But it no longer controlled me. It didn't own me. It didn't even hurt anymore. It was just something that happened. Something I grew from. As I stood there with Elise's head resting against my shoulder, breathing in the cool night air, I realized I didn't just survive the betrayal. I didn't just walk away. I found something better on the other side. I found myself. And that was the greatest victory of ever